advanced facts, we're ready for project number 2, mayonnaise cake. Let me remind you what the requirements are. You have 3 choices. Choice number 1, watch this video, make it with me, and enjoy the project. Choice number 2, there's not going to be any substitutions on this one, so we're going to skip choice number 2 today. Choice number 3, watch the video, answer the Google Doc questions, and submit those. All right, so before you freak out, because this is one of those recipes that you guys freak out on, let me talk to you about mayonnaise. When I tell you you're making mayonnaise cake, you guys are like, that's got to be the grossest thing in the world. But let's think about it for a second. What is mayonnaise? Mayonnaise is eggs and oil. And of course, there's other things for preservatives and stuff like that. But when you make a cake mix, what do you add to the cake mix? Eggs and oil. So, before you freak out, just think, I'm adding eggs and oil. All right, so we're gonna start out with adding our flour, and I'm gonna remind you guys a couple of the things that we do. When we do flour, get your fork, fluff your flour, and then add your 2 cups, spooning in. Remember, we overfill, and all this is done so that we don't add too much flour to our recipe. So there's 1 cup. You learned this clear back in beginning facts, so I expect you to use those things that I taught you by fluffing that flour. All right, there's cup number 2. Then it tells us we need to add a cup of sugar. So I'm gonna go to my sugar canister right here, and I'm gonna level out my cup of sugar and add that in. Then I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of baking soda. I already measured that out, so you didn't have to watch me measure. There's nothing special there. And then we're going to add our 1/2 cup of cocoa. Here's my 1/2 cup of cocoa. I'm gonna go ahead and add it in. The instructions say combine all of the dry ingredients in a bowl. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add that, and I'm gonna turn my mixer on just to get everything combined. And you see how I've got all my dry ingredients combined? All right, so now here's the thing. I have been teaching you over and over and over about water displacement. Today, we're gonna be using water displacement again. The recipe calls for 1 cup of water and 1 cup of mayonnaise. I've got my liquid measuring cup because water is a liquid. I've got 1 cup. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add mayonnaise to here, and then I'll stop when it gets up to the 2 cups. And when it gets up to the 2 cups, what do I have? A cup of water and a cup of mayonnaise. I hate mayonnaise. I think it smells nasty. It's got a horrible texture to it, but I do recognize that it is vital for some things. And as weird as it is, today it's vital for our cake mix. I went ahead and added a cup of mayonnaise to my cup of water, and now I'm at 2 cups. This is gonna go into my KitchenAid as my liquid. This will be just like adding eggs and oil to my mixer. The last thing I'm gonna do, and you guys know my feelings on Mexican vanilla, I'm gonna add my teaspoon of Mexican vanilla. We all know Mexican vanilla rocks it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna mix this until it's really nice and incorporated. All right, I have it all really incorporated in. I have given it a good scrape around and remixed it, so we're ready to prep the pan. We're gonna go ahead and spray with Pam, or cooking spray, doesn't matter. And then we're going to put that cake batter into the pan. One of the ways to quickly get the cake batter off of here, just tap it on the side of the bowl. And of course, I teach you all the time about clean as you go. So that's gonna go into my hot soapy water that I've already made. And I'm gonna go and pour that into the cake pan. Now, let me talk to you while I'm doing this. This is one of my family's favorite recipes. This came from my mother. She gets requests all the time to make this for her grandkids for their birthday. Before you write it off, try it out. My mom likes to add walnuts to it. I'm not a huge walnut fan, so I'm gonna leave the walnuts out today, but she loves to add walnuts. She'll add it in the cake, and she always has somebody that doesn't want walnuts, and so her trick is to put a toothpick in the walnut side. Then the other thing that she does is when she frosts it, she puts walnuts on the top of the frosting as well, so you know that half of the cake has got walnuts in it, that half of the cake is plain. We're gonna go for plain today. Let me talk to you about a couple of things really quick with our high altitude. Here in Snowflake, we have an altitude of 5,862 feet above sea level. When you're at 5,000 or higher, you do need to do some changes to your recipes with cake. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some changes that we need to make and adjustments we need to make because of our high altitude here in Snowflake and Taylor. There are 4 different ways that you can reduce the sinking of your cake. The first one is to reduce by 1/4 teaspoon your baking powder. Problem is, we didn't use baking powder in this cake. The second one is to reduce some of the sugar. For each cup of sugar, you take out 2 tablespoons of sugar. Number 3, increase the liquid. For each cup, you add 2 tablespoons of extra liquid. And number 4, you increase the oven temperature by 25 degrees. So today it's telling to do a 350 degree oven. I'm gonna up it to 375 and I'm gonna try that one. I have in the past tried adding more flour and it hasn't really helped. So we'll see if upping my temperature to 375 will do it for me. So I've got my oven set at 375. The cake is gonna go in. The recipe calls for 20 to 25 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and start with 20 minutes. At the end of 20 minutes, I'll check it, see if it's done, and then if it's not, put it in longer. If it is, we'll let it cool, and we're gonna add some nice, delicious chocolate frosting. So 20 minutes have passed. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna check my cake to make sure that it's done. So I'm gonna take my toothpick, and I'm gonna pull it out. It's showing that it's not quite done yet, so I'm gonna add another 5 more minutes. See you in 5. So it's been 5 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna check that cake again. Got my clean toothpick. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna poke it again. And this time the toothpick comes out clean, so guess what? Our cake is done. The cake is gonna go onto the cooling rack and cool. Now, I want you to check something out. I don't have much sinking in my cake, so that adding 25 degrees on helped at this point. We'll see if as it cools, it sinks or if I've solved my problem that way. So we'll go ahead and we'll put this on the cooling rack and let it cool. While the cake is cooling, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna make the frosting. This frosting is a teeny bit different than what I've taught you in beginning FACS. Instead of regular milk, we're gonna use evaporated milk. 2 things. It's nice to have milk in your storage for times such as these. And this is going to give it just a teeny bit more fluff to the frosting. So that's one of the changes that we're gonna make. All right, so I've measured out 2 cups of powdered sugar. I'm gonna put that in there. If you remember from all of our teaching on frosting, I do a golf ball size of shortening. The reason I do a golf ball size is shortening's not fun to measure, and a golf ball size is about 2 tablespoons. All right? No, you don't have to put it in your hand and shape it into a golf ball. Doesn't want to come off my spoon today. So we will use a finger. All right, then it calls for a tablespoon of cocoa. We're gonna make a nice chocolate frosting today. I've already measured that out for us. And a dash of salt. Remember, a dash of salt, chunk. That's all it is. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do a little bit of beating before I add my milk, just to chop that shortening up into little teeny tiny pieces and incorporate it in with the powdered sugar. Then I'll go ahead and I'll add some milk to make it the right consistency. It's time to add some evaporated milk. Remember, add a little bit at a time. You can always add more, but once you've added it, you can't take it away. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna mix it in. When I can see that there's no more milk to mix in, I'll add a teeny bit more milk. You can see it starting to get all that powdered sugar worked in. Let's check the consistency. Check it out, it's perfect. Now, with this one, we're going to go ahead and we're gonna beat it on high speed for 1 minute. It's gonna give us the most wonderful, fluffy icing you've ever had. Final step in our mayonnaise cake. We have cooled the cake, we have whipped the frosting. It's time to frost our cake. So, let's go through a couple of the things that I taught you about frosting a cake. Very first thing is load the cake with too much frosting. So I'm gonna put that frosting there. And I don't know that I've got too much on this one because I don't believe that there's such a thing as too much frosting, but we're gonna load that frosting on there. And then I'm gonna spread from the middle out. This makes it so that I don't rip my cake. I can still feel just a teeny tiny bit of heat. This is gonna be one yummy cake. I'm gonna take my plastic knife. Remember, a plastic knife will cut through it without leaving the crumbs. And I'm gonna do something incredibly naughty here. I'm going for a middle piece. I figure if I'm eating my cake, I'm getting the best one possible. So it's probably not gonna come out nice and pretty, but that's okay because I like middle pieces. Look at that gorgeous dark chocolate. Nice, creamy, fluffy frosting. For a person who doesn't appreciate chocolate, this is amazing chocolate cake. Bon appetit.